This conference will now be recorded.
We're only missing Carter. I'll give him another minute or two, then we'll get cranking.
Yes.
Shalane, can you hear us yet?
Yeah, log out and log back in. I think that you set it to do your phone instead of your computer audio. Maybe. Worth a try.
There we go.
And then there was sound.
There you go. All right, I've got 6:34 on my computer. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I will call the May 24th regular meeting of the Charter Review Committee to order. And at this point in time, I'll open it up for citizen comments. Any citizens in the audience out there, which looks like Letha, if she'd like to make a comment, we'll let her.
I don't have anything to say. I'm just an observer. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the discussion items. Do we have any comments from Council Liaison? We can start with, I thought I saw Arch there. Yeah, there he is. Arch, would you like to make any comments tonight?
I don't have any comments. Thank you very much for the time, though.
Okay. Ms. Marion?
The only thing I have, Judge Durbin is asking about the, or if you received the information on the dates and what the schedule for completion for the committee looks like. So
I did get
sure that.
I did get some dates from you, I believe, stating the timeline that's necessary. But and we're moving along. What I will do is I'll include that in the packet for next time so that everybody can see it. And that way, you know, we'll all be headed towards the right brick wall. Hopefully, we all arrive at the same time.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. In that case, let's move on. And tonight we'll get right to the meat of it. And we are discussing the potential changes in the charter from Section 9 to the finish. Section 9, or Article 9, excuse me, is the article on taxation. And to my surprise, you'd think that would be a biggie, but I couldn't find a whole lot I felt like needed changing in there. And I believe somebody, and I don't recall whether it was Gage or Paul, came up with a potential change in 904 to about 2/3 of the way down. In that paragraph is a sentence that starts off with, the city council may provide further by ordinance that all delinquent taxes. And this is basically to set up installment plans. And the proposed addition was to make that delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest due the city be paid in installments. So basically, whatever they owe can be put into an installment plan, and that can be settled rather than the alternative, which I believe would be to sue them and try to foreclose on their property and things like that. It basically gives the council additional flexibility in preparing a resolutions to those sort of problems. I thought that sounded like a good idea. Do we have any discussion or comment on it? And whoever suggested it, please let me know if I didn't present it properly.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd second that with Gage, his idea for further
Yeah.
discussion.
Okay. You think that needs further discussion, or do we all pretty much agree on
I don't
that?
think it needs discussion. I would just endorse the idea as proposed.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna note that there's some general consensus on that, because basically the way that I think then hopefully we can knock out all the general consensus ones very quickly and then begin our lively debate and discussion of the ones we don't have consensus on. So,
There's a couple of just grammatical things on here about, I guess, kind of 2/3, 1/3 of the way down. It says all taxes due the city. So it's all taxes due to the city. And it's on multiple sentences that say that. All taxes due the city.
yeah, that's beyond my grammar scale to know. I could call my wife, who was educated by the Jesuits, into try and verify that grammatically. I see things written this way many times in a lot of legal documents. I don't believe there's if it is a grammatical flaw, I don't think it's a fatal one. Does anybody else have somebody else want to weigh in on that?
I agree. I would agree with you. I think you're both right. I just don't think it's consequential.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. And since we would like to minimize the changes we want to make to things that actually make a difference, you know, that because this will go to city council and then it'll extend the length of the ballot and all that other sort of stuff, that those points that Frank has been bringing up. So we really do want to only make the changes that we feel like we need to make. And there's plenty of those. So I appreciate it. And I think you're right too. I think for clarity's sake, that's the way it should have been written. But I don't think it's fatal the way it is.
Okay.
All right. Okay. If that's all on the tax section, we will move on to franchises and public utilities. Section 10.01, public services and utilities. There was a proposed change in section A to add to that list of items that the city can construct, lease, maintain, operate, a data communications infrastructure, which in today's times, I think makes a lot of sense. That is more and more important for, I know it's going to be more and more important for economic development to be able to show that you know, anything that's built or new here is going to be able to get good data communications.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It
And
needs the flexibility it needs. Not simple as that.
Rob, that was my suggestion, but I'm not sure I'm using the right nomenclature there. What I was basically trying to do is to include internet service providers under the same umbrella that we do all of these other public services. So if we don't feel like, you know, that's the right language, we can certainly modify it, but that was the intent.
And I thought this was yours. And honestly, I looked at that and I said, I thought the exact same thing. Is that the right lingo we ought to be using? And I went round and round with myself and tried about 4 different iterations of other things, and I really couldn't come up with anything better. So I just left it the way it was in hopes that some of the other smart people in this room could if there was anything problematic about it, they could come up with a better better language. We may not need the word infrastructure on there since they're talking about, you know, communications. They're not talking, they don't say communications infrastructure or lines. So,
Right.
And we don't care whether it's honestly, you know, wires, optic cables, microwaves, or carrier pigeon. So, you know, we could probably strike the word infrastructure and it would still work.
Do we need to strike the word communications and just replace with, or just simply put data in front of the existing word communications? Wouldn't that be all encompassing either way?
Well, I think the communication that was in here originally is probably voice. And you know, now they're pretty much one and the same in a lot of instances, because you know 80% of the people use their phone for all of their internet work.
So maybe it could be transportation, comma, communications infrastructure. I mean, you're either communicating, you know, digitally by some form, analog or digital communications, one way or the other, it's still happening. I don't know how much time we need to spend on this, but
I don't either. I mean, we could change it to voice and data communications and move it to the last one in the list. If we wanted to do that.
I think the goal of that language is to just, if the city ever got to a point where we're not getting the broadband infrastructure build out through private investment, if the city wanted to act on its own, it has the ability to do that. I think that's what Gage is probably thinking. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, like I said, you know, the group I was talking about are the ISPs, the internet service providers. Maybe we call it internet connectivity or access. I'm not tied to any specific language.
We actually could probably just replace all 3 of those words with broadband and leave it at that too.
Well, there's some providers out there, some internet providers out there that are not broadband.
Right.
And so we want to be sure that we include those.
Well, yeah, I would be a little concerned about trying to describe different types of technologies that transmit it.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Agreed. I mean, what we're basically talking about is connection to the internet, right?
No.
Okay.
That would be my point. Some of this stuff is TV.
I think we've already got that covered, don't we?
You do.
Cable television.
Yeah,
Well,
cable television's in there. This is
cable
all about
television.
franchise fees and public utilities.
Yeah.
I like Gage's original term, and let's move on.
All right, let's just move on then. If anybody thinks of a better term on that, I mean, I think we have a consensus that it needs to be in there. We just don't have it. And none of us can think anything better. So let's just leave it at that. And if somebody comes up with something, we will we can change it later, because I think that I think we're okay. All right, let's move on to the next potential change. And if I miss any of anything, because when we get down here into the you know, additional provisions and things like that, some of the things that may have been brought up earlier or didn't fit in any place earlier. There ought to be in there, and it is possible I missed them. So please just holler out and yell. I'm fine with that. All right, and boy, that's the only change I had in that whole section.
Down after E, these powers shall be vested in the council, and the council may exercise. I know you're all about the simplicity of things, but there should be a comma there. These powers shall be vested in the council and the council. I mean, if we're going to fix this.
You think there should be a comma after the first council?
Well, yeah, because then you say and the council.
There. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Oh, Rob, the only other note I have is just a question mark, and whether, for the same reasons we talked about that additional language in 1001A,
Yeah.
whether it needed to be also in 1004 and 1005, since those sections do the same thing of identifying the different services.
Yeah, I think it probably should. I thought that was something in there, just to be. It's kind of weird. 1005's got, 10, one's for utilities and one's for services.
Yeah.
And it has cable television services down as a public service, but I would suspect cable is probably really a public utility, isn't it, Aaron? Yep. So, I agree they should be consistent, and I will plug it in down there. The question is now, do we want to try to fix the previous mistake by moving the utility listed as a service up to the service? Let's see. Yeah, sewage telephone service. And it looks like they forgot they had a copy and paste tool back then on this, because all of these lists are just a tad different. I only.
Well, they're the
Okay. Okay. I don't think, does anybody object to me moving cable television up to the utilities? Because I think that's where it's supposed to be. Since we're making a change in that paragraph anyway, let's get it right. Okay. Franchises for public service. Okay. I think that covers it if we move that up to the utilities to 1004. All right. Let's see. Anything else in 1005, 1006? Yes, Christina. Can't hear you. There you go.
On section I, in 1006, I
Yeah.
had a question. Okay, let's see. The last sentence, it says, if the franchise holders are unable to agree on terms and or rentals for the joint use of facilities, what is that?
It looks like a conversion error.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to go back to
No,
find
this is in the original.
that's in the original too?
Mhm.
Okay. I think it's a mistake, is what I think it is. Franchise holders are unable to agree on terms and or rentals for joint use.
I wonder if that's supposed to be and/or.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
I bet that's right. Yep.
Right. Thank you.
That'd certainly fix it. Good one.
Yep.
Good catch, Christina. Good fix, Gage. Okay. All right. Good eyeballs. Okay. 10:06, 10:07. $10:08. To 9, 10, 10. And there was an earlier comment from Councilman Sullivan regarding where he thought there might have been a conflict between 10, 12 and the manager's powers way back earlier, but we never found the conflict, and I think we all just decided that Josh leased something he probably shouldn't have leased without taking to council. Frank?
Don't know that. There is an ordinance about this, and I haven't read it. But that's an issue. That's a fact or a statement that I'm not sure I want to sign on to.
Okay.
That Josh made the error because
okay.
I haven't studied it and I haven't read the ordinance about movies.
To be fair, for Frank's point, to be fair, Josh may have complied with an ordinance allowing him to do so, but there does not appear to be any conflict between the two provisions in the charter. That fair enough, Frank? Okay, thank you. All right, that's all we've got on section 10. Section 11, I have a note off to the side, and this was a suggestion, and perhaps it should have been in the personnel section, the human resources section, but it could also be a general provision, and that is, do we want a paragraph somewhere that requires the city or human resources to conduct background checks on all appointed elected officials or employees?
So I think that if we feel it necessary to do background checks on anybody wanting to do business with the city, if that is the case, or anybody the city wishes to license, then certainly I think it's it's good for the goose, good for the gander. I mean, it raises the bar. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right. Are we doing that for people that want to do business with the city? Well, I don't know that they're doing that either.
I can tell you that before the Building and Standards Commission, we're looking at we're in the process of trying to put together proposed language for a city ordinance that would license and regulate general contractors and subcontractors in the city. And one of those requirements would be for them to pass a background check.
And I don't know the personnel policies at the moment. I mean, this may have been taken care of by ordinance. I don't know.
Yes,
And
I think that's right.
And it may be in the human resources handbook that says, yeah, somebody gets hired, they're going to do a background check on them. I think what this is saying, the only thing this would add is elected and appointed folks. So,
but if they're elected, I would think the federal or state laws would dictate that. Not, I mean, you could, local could always be more restrictive than the governing, but
and hopefully the electorate would be more, whoever's running against them would probably be happy to point it out. Okay. The thing says Lynn Tannehill. Is that you out there, Carter?
He was texting me about 5 minutes ago for the meeting link. He was having difficulty getting in, so I suspect
he may be listening.
Yeah, I kept trying to get in with this number access code, and I got April the 26th meeting, and of course that was not the right meeting, so it kept saying the owner didn't show up yet.
Okay, and that may have been my fault, as I had sent the agenda to Sandra, and then it got posted after Dave did his magic and put the numbers on there, and then it seemed to disappear for a while, and I sent out some stuff, but I'm not even sure I had the magic numbers at that time, so that could have been my fault. If so, I'm sorry. Okay.
Can I ask a question just to Paul Roberts about what he was talking about?
Yes.
The Building and Standards Committee is now running background checks on all of their contractors. Oh no, what were you saying?
No, we're just trying to come up with a way to protect citizens from nefarious, from bad contractors.
I see. Okay.
That's all.
And so from that, we're trying to do the elected officials and the appointed officials as well?
No, the question was, should we add a paragraph that would require background checks on elected and appointed committee and commission members as well as employees? And I was drawing a correlation between the two, suggesting that if we're going to do it on one side, we may need to do it on the other. But since we just addressed that and decided we're not going to do that.
And one other thought I'd like to bring up is, Carter, are you trying to say something?
No, I did have my mic on. The only thing I saw when I went through the section 10 was a couple typos, and I guess those were already discussed.
Hope so. I hope we got them. Okay. But the other thing on this is, when you say background check, it sounds like it, like there's a standard thing out there that's a background check, and there isn't. Right. I mean, are we talking criminal background checks? Are we talking digging into their credit reports and their credit ratings and
judgments against them, things like that?
Yeah, all that sort of nonsense. And I don't think the city wants to spend that much money on every person they hire and every person they appoint. Right. And B, it's probably not necessary. It isn't necessary, I don't think. Plus, nobody would volunteer for anything if it's going to allow the city to go crawling through their past for the last 30 years.
Are we currently background checking anyone? I mean, employees, anything? Is there any kind of a?
I think employees have a criminal background check performed.
Employees have one, Mr. Chairman, employees have one. There's a basic check that's run on candidates because you cannot have been convicted of a felony. That's an eligibility requirement. So I have to check the Sandra checks for that, or has, I think Dan does it in HR for that particular piece. He has access. There are certain checks that are done, like for our youth advisory committee. The adult volunteer will get a background check, but the personnel policy does it for all employees.
I honestly think that should be ordinance driven as opposed to charter driven, just because there's so many different levels of background checks that I don't know that we could say anything that would cover what we really wanted, that somebody might not be able to get around. They could say, oh yeah, we did a background check. We checked we made sure they didn't have any traffic tickets for the last 2 years. Well, that doesn't help much.
And Aaron, the test or whatever that you run for the candidates, do y'all do anything like that for the boards or commissions or anything like that as well currently?
I'm not aware that we do that for members of boards, committees, or commissions. Now, there is something in the charter that states, and I think what's coming up, that those members of the boards, committee, or commission can't be in arrears to the city. And so they do check for that, but it's not otherwise no background, criminal history review or other review.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine with how they have it currently. I don't think that adding, especially in the charter.
Right.
I think philosophically, one could argue that should somebody who is an ex-felon who's not allowed to vote be involved in any kind of the creation of city ordinances that people would need to vote on. I'm not interested in making that argument. I'm just putting that antagonist.
I think whoever runs against them for council would probably point it out.
Yeah, like you, I agree. Let the elected decide if they want the person, ex-felon or otherwise, up there.
Yeah. Okay.
Lord knows.
Well, an ex-felon, Paul, is still somebody that's been convicted of a felony, so they may not be eligible for the position anyway, even if they've served their time and done all that other stuff that's supposed to rehabilitate them.
Right. There's no automatic restoration of the right to hold public office.
Right.
Oh, so you just answered that. I didn't realize that an ex-felon could not hold public office.
That's right. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well,
unless you've been pardoned.
All right.
Okay.
So let's move on.
Yeah. All righty. Off we go. Down to, I think the first suggestion I have is under 1103, under public records. And Mr. Roberts, I think this was your suggestion. All public records of the city hall shall be open to inspection, copying by the public, subject to rules, regulations, and exceptions provided by state law. And instead of the council, you'd like to change it to and local ordinance, which makes sense because each request shouldn't have to go to city council. And I'm sure they've got.
We don't need politicians deciding what should be slowing things down.
Right. Right. I just think your statement is just more accurate anyway. All right. Good. I can put another consensus thing.
State law drives that anyway.
Are we going to keep microfilm and other photographic process? We are going to keep microfilm. Okay.
Oh,
there's some.
I'm sorry.
That's still
okay. On 11.3, public records by microfilm or other photographic process.
Yeah, I was wondering if we needed to change that and modernize it to maybe image reproduction instead of photographic.
Data, that's straight up data retention. Council may order provide for the accurate.
Council may by ordinance provide for accurate and permanent
By
copy.
any electronic mean, by any means necessary, applicable.
You could just end it in that sentence after the words public records.
Yeah,
I think that's the way to do it.
right.
Agreed.
Good call, Frank. Yeah, it's hard to figure out what photographic process is nowadays, since most photographic processes is digital. It's really a screwy one. Okay. Conflict of interests and standards of conduct. Let's see. Ethics policy and a code of conduct. Something I note out there. Nope, it's a format change. And they're talking about that. Oh no, I guess they're talking about their rules of procedure nowadays. Okay, acceptance of gifts. That's in here. There is also ordinances in the ethics portion, in the ethics code of the city. So I think it's pretty well covered. The ordinance section might need to be cleaned up, but that doesn't have anything to do with us. Okay. Now, on the notice of claim against the city, somebody brought this to my attention, and I think they may have had some wording, and I may have changed it. So let's make sure we're all on the same page. But on the change is on the 4th line, and it says, before the city shall become liable for any damage claim or suit, attorney's fees or costs of court arising out of or for any personal injury or damage to property or violation of any statutory right or duty, the person who is injured or whose property has been damaged, or someone on his or her behalf. And when I added the language with appropriate legal capacity, because the way it was worded, it just said someone on their behalf shall give the city. I mean, and that could have been Uncle Charlie or your next door neighbor, or it needs to be, it needs to be by someone, or preferably by their retained attorney.
I think by adding that language, Rob, with appropriate legal capacity ensures that you don't have, just an HOA proxy reworded, shall we say?
Correct.
Something officiated, notarized, a proper document affirming that authority, not just something that's implied or suggested.
Yeah, and in any case, it gives the council guidance to draft an ordinance, which is what the charter does in a lot of sense. I mean, they can decide what appropriate legal capacity is, but it just can't be anybody on their behalf, because that could be somebody that they didn't even give permission to. Okay, Ms. Lucero.
I agree with you. And the B paragraph has the same wording, so we should put that down there as well.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good catch. Okay. Anything else on 1107? Um, 1108. And I heard that ice tinkling in the glass and it made me thirsty. Under 1108, that is pretty much boilerplate type stuff. I'm not sure we ought to mess with that. And then under 1109, power to settle claims. The council have the sole authority to compromise and settle any and all claims and all suits of every kind and character in favor of or against the city, except suits by the city to recover delinquent taxes. And I added on here, or criminal actions, because the criminal actions are prosecuted by the state. The city, Aaron is essentially the attorney for the state on criminal actions, and that's not really the council's domain, because she's a state official in that capacity and operating in a state court hosted by the city. So I added that just because I thought it made sense and more accurately represented the facts out there. Aaron, you probably understand it better than anybody else. Do you agree with that?
It makes sense. I'm double checking one thing, and if I have a comment, I'll let you know, but I think it should be fine.
Okay. All right.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What's an example of the city settling a claim that has to do with a criminal action?
Well, depends on what they mean by claims, and it doesn't say in all claims. It says all claims and all suits of every kind and character in favor of or against the city. So it's not just somebody making a claim. It's a lawsuit, and if the city makes a claim against a criminal defendant, although the state is always the plaintiff in those cases. I just thought it made a very I just wanted to make it clear that the council is not involved in criminal actions, period. Did that make sense, Frank?
Well, yeah, this is legalese, I guess, but I could not figure out what a claim that's related to a criminal action is. And I still don't get it, but that's okay. We can move right along. And if you and Aaron think it's a good thing to add, I'm right there.
Well, I'm not a municipal lawyer at all, and never claimed to be. And that is, I just believe that wording more accurately reflects the way the justice system is built.
I agree. That's my point. But so, okay.
Yeah. And Aaron, you feel free to holler in if you find something you got a problem with in that, no matter where we are, even if we're 10 sections down, and we'll keep going. All right, bribery is prohibited. That's a good plan. Let's see, political activities and city officers and employees. I didn't see anything objectionable in there, and I don't believe anybody else pointed anything out. But Christina, you got your hand up, so let's go ahead.
I just have a question. Who's watching all this? Like, it sounds like the city council kind of runs the city a little bit, but who's watching the city council? Sometimes.
Well, you know, that's why their meetings are public. That's why, you know, it's supposed to be the people.
But like in section 1111, political activities with city officers and employees.
Right. Well,
Well, I think they're presumed innocent until somebody alleges something, and then when that allegation comes forth, we should have a city ordinance which prescribes for how to handle that.
right. And in 1111, it's talking about city officers or employees that receive a wage, which essentially would be just the city employees, because council members don't get anything, don't get any money.
Sure.
Shall in any manner solicit or assist in soliciting any assessment, subscription, or contribution for any political purposes. But I mean, about the only thing that I could suggest in there is whether or not a city officer receives a wage or a salary, they shouldn't be doing that stuff. The only thing I could see is to strike that essentially that parenthetical section between the two commas that says who receives a wage or a salary from the city, because whether they're receiving a salary, they should not be assisting in soliciting an assessment, subscription, or contribution for political purposes from any other city officer or employee. You know,
Christine, are you thinking we need to beef this up in some capacity or another?
Well, just that, I mean, well, this section especially has to do with, you know, city officers, city council, and employees. And I'm just wondering if there's anyone watching, monitoring, any kinds of checks and balances that we do on this side, or, Frank, sorry, I'm not running the show. Go ahead.
that's okay, Frank.
Used to.
To what?
Used to.
Used to? There used to be what?
Check on 11.11. You ask who did that, and I'm just, I did, others. Yeah, yeah.
And there's not anyone.
No, that's one reason why there needs to be free communication between the public and the council members, because anybody that's going to see it's going to be the public, or it's going to be you know, anybody that sees any wrongdoing is probably going to be another employee, some member of the public, or a contractor or something like that. So there needs to be some communication between those guys and the folks that actually are in charge to point those things out. And then once they point them out, there's ethics violations that can be filed by anybody. Anybody that can raise their hand and swear anyway. Is that what you were going to say, Erin?
Yeah, it's addressed in our ethics policy. There's an entire procedure that's laid out in the ethics policy that's adopted by ordinance that kind of describes how it works. For employees, it's managed and overseen by the city manager or department heads. For council members, it's fellow council members. Now, the public can also bring allegations or complaints forward regarding this particular aspect as well. And there's a process out, the process itself is in the ethics policy. So that's, council oversees other council members, public oversees council members to the extent that they have the ability, and city manager and department heads over employees.
And the people watch everybody and can bring a complaint against anybody.
Right.
Okay. Severability. Okay. This is the severability clause of the charter that says if any one little section of it is bad, it doesn't make the entire charter bad. You just go on with the charter without that one little section. Okay, it's a standard thing in most governmental documents and contracts. And that doesn't fix everything, but it should be in every contract anyway. Because judges really hate to have to rewrite contracts and have to rewrite documents that should have been written right in the first place. Okay. Charter amendment. Amendments to this charter must be formulated and submitted to the voters of the city in the manner prescribed by state law. Nothing we can change there. It basically says to change it, we got to go through the process we're going to go through that's prescribed by state law. And once we are, I mean, to my knowledge, and Aaron, agree with me if or not, but we are an ultimate advisory board. We don't have any policy making or anything. We simply provide an advisory comment to the council, and they can throw it in the trash, rewrite it, do whatever they want, and then submit it to the voters. Is that an accurate statement, Aaron?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And the construction of the charter says the charter shall be liberally construed and through the general grants of power. So which is why we got to be careful when we say, when we are, when we're trying to give the council broad latitude, this section assists in that. It says this should be read liberally to give the powers to the city. Yes, Christina.
Sorry, and the section right before this one,
Yes.
Sorry, you kind of went from the charter amendment straight into the construction of it.
Yeah, sorry.
The charter review, would it be helpful to have an odd number amount of people, whether it's 3 to 6, still having an odd amount, just in case there was ever a tie, kind of a tiebreaker, if people were.
When they put this committee together this time, they were very specific to try and wanted to get as many members on as they could, which was 6. Well, we'll have to go through our process of voting to see whether that's a really good idea or not. I mean, if we got a bunch of 3-3 deadlocks, then that may be something that we might want to add at the very last minute. But I kind of like the idea that we should have 4 people that agree to do something, and that's 3 is not a majority. So if it's a deadlock, it won't go forward as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we'll report it as such, but then we'll, my thoughts is we'll go through each of these amendments that we're talking about making, vote on each one specifically, and then take all of those pieces, put it back together into one document and say, this is the document. Do we all agree that it should be the one that goes forward? And hopefully we get a vote that is consistent with how we voted on the individual stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Reservations of defenses. Nothing contained in this charter shall be construed to mean the city waives any rights, privileges, defenses, or immunities. Okay. We're not going to affect any lawsuits or things of that nature with the charter. If they've got a right, a privilege, a defense, or an immunity, they've got it no matter what we do with the charter. Okay? And that provision should stay there. That's something we don't want to screw up. All right? Applicability of general laws, in addition to the powers conferred by the Constitution of the State of Texas and statutes applicable to home rule cities, is now or hereinafter enacted by this charter. The ordinances enacted pursuant here to the city shall also have the power to exercise any and all powers conferred by the laws of the state of Texas upon any other kind of city, town, or village not contrary to the provisions of said home rule statutes in this charter. Okay, so the state has already given a kind of a set of rights and that we aren't dealing with here. If the city says this is the way it's got to be, then that's the way it's got to be. So we're not messing with that. All right. Submission to the Charter of the Voters. The Charter Commission in preparing this charter concludes that it is impractical to segregate each subject so as to permit a vote of yes or no on each subject, because the charter is so constructed that in order to enable it to work and function as necessary, that it be adopted in its entirety. For this reason, the Charter Commission directs that the charter be voted upon as a whole, and that it shall be submitted to the qualified voters of the election to be held for that purpose on, and we need to change those dates. I'm not sure what the date of the election is this year.
No, this was the original adoption of the charter. This is not about amendments.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
So
Okay.
And we're proposing amendments, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
This is the mission of the original charter. The original had to go as a whole. Amendments go separately, and they have to be voted on individually as.
All right. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Right.
Okay.
Rob,
Yeah. Right.
2 points, and I don't think I've written this or talked to you about it. I don't know why this section needs to be in it at all. Number
It's
one.
kind of a historical statement, basically. Yeah.
Well,
Was 2000?
Yeah, that's number one. That's a question. So one might delete it as not applicable. The second one has to do with the issue, and Arch and I have talked about this real briefly, which says it concludes that it's impractical to segregate each subject, The issue is impractical to segregate each issue. The question I have is, and it's a legal one, because we probably are going to have another, Ms. Chairman, what I think you're calling non-substantive or grammatical issues that we're suggesting, can those be somehow combined so that we don't have 40 or 50 separate items to vote on? You with me on that point? We're going to have a real long ballot if every single change we make has to be on the ballot. And that'll raise a number, and Arch has spoken to this, I think, too. But I think if you have a 40 or 50 change charter to our voters, I think that jeopardizes the whole thing. So the question is there a way to do these? It's a legal question where we might be able to put together the improvements that don't change the meaning and like one section of the ballot, somehow to pare the ballot down. That's all. But I would delete the whole section. I would delete 1118, but then I've got this idea about how do we shorten up the ballot.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In accordance with the Local Government Code 9.004, 9.004E, every amendment submitted for a charter amendment must contain only one subject, and the ballot shall be prepared in that same manner so that the voter may vote yes or no on any one or more amendments without having to approve or disapprove all of the amendments. So that's the point that I think Frank's trying to make. It's tied back to what the local government code requires. Now, if they're non-substantive, I have seen ballot measures that say that that give the council the authority to make non-substantive revisions. And so I think that that's okay. It just can't be substantive. So you can have a catch-all ballot measure at the end, but then all the others have to be independent.
Right.
Well,
As
and
long
I
as
throw
it-
out, and I throw out options, guys. So pardon me, but I'm going to do it again.
That's
The
fine.
way to have a shorter ballot's a whole brand new charter.
Yeah, agreed.
Age, yeah,
That's what I was thinking too. It's basically
Yeah.
a brand new charter.
yeah.
But
I'm not sure taking out a whole section would be the answer.
that's,
And this
well,
kind of explains to people, like, you know, it'll happen after a year of adoption, and it'll, you know, it kind of explains this whole thing to the lay person. So I don't think taking this whole thing out is the answer.
yeah. Aaron, was this the first city charter? I mean,
2004, no, it was amended. It's been amended in 15 and 18.
yeah, no, but I mean, was 2004 the very first time the city had a charter? It had one before that.
I think
No.
we were not home rule. We were
Yeah,
type A previous, because we weren't big
Yeah.
enough.
that's when we went over 5,000 and then we did it. Yeah.
Okay. I was here then. I traveled a lot back then and I didn't remember it at all. Okay.
Didn't they used to be a different time of year? Like, didn't they used to be done on March or something like that? And then we changed to November to align with the elections. Isn't that what happened?
The footnote at the bottom of page 1 says this city charter was originally adopted by the voters of the city at an election held November 2nd, 2004, and has been subsequently amended at elections held on November 3rd, 2015 and November 6th, 2018. And then this year's election will be added to it, assuming something moves forward.
Okay. Well, let's, my suggestion, Frank, is we'll save this for, you know, this might be something you might want to bring up as a future agenda item as to how to, you know, maybe to try to figure out a way to shorten the ballot. And we'll try to talk about it then. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. All right, that pretty much gets us to the end of the document. Let's see, I had that background checks thing. I just put in some things down here that were potential areas that that either I thought of or somebody mentioned to me that might be a good idea. And that is if there's a duty, if you see something, to say something. You know, as Aaron and I know, the way the law practice works is, you know, believe it or not, we're lawyers, and us lawyers actually have rules of ethics that we have to follow. And it is up to the other lawyers to bring to the attention of grievance boards and that sort of thing, any sort of malfeasance. And if you don't bring it up, if you know about it and you don't bring it up, you yourself has committed a grievanceable offense. So, you know, is there something, and I believe that's what they're talking about here, is do you have a duty to report wrongdoing? And if you violate that duty, what is the and the other question, what is the result? And the other question is should that be part of the ethics code? So basically this would force it to be in the ethics code. Yeah, Paul.
So the question I think for all of us here is, do we want to discuss that topic further and quantify?
That's
So
all we need.
I would be in favor of that.
Yep. Okay, I got 3. I'm a 4, so we'll keep that for the discussion.
Defined terms.
Yeah, the question will be whether, where would we put it in here? And I think it would have to be in the ethics portion. And we'll now that everybody thinks that, or several of us think it needs to be discussed further, if you don't mind, I'll take a look and see if there's a place that I think it's apropos, and I'll stick it in. And if it's not, we can move it around. If that works for everybody, that's what I'll do.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Christina?
Maybe in the defined terms, we can actually have a term for charter, and we can define, maybe we can break out some of 1118 and say something about how the charter will happen 1 year after adoption, and kind of shed some light on part of 1118 through the defined terms of what a charter is and what it does and how it takes effect and all of that.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, if it gets passed, I'm not exactly sure when exactly it goes into effect. Does the charter go into effect the day that they certify the results, or is there a date at which it begins, Aaron?
Currently, it says the charter shall take effect immediately following adoption by the voters and shall be fully operable within 1 year after adoption.
Okay, what that 1 year does, Christine, is when they're saying fully operable, that's like the deadline for the city to have made whatever changes they need to the ordinances to comply with the charter. That's the way I would read that.
Yeah.
Is that the meaning of that, Aaron, in your mind?
All right, that's consistent with how I thought of it, yes.
Okay. All right. Frank, did you have your hand up?
It was covered, thanks.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's what that 1 year means. And we've talked a couple of times about whether we want to have defined terms or not. It sounds like that discussion needs to go on, which is pretty much all we need to do tonight. I don't know that we need to say what terms need to be defined. If that is something that everybody would like to see, start thinking of the terms you'd like to see defined. And I'm certainly happy to listen to any sort of recommended lingo. I don't feel the need to write them all myself. Let's put it that way. So I will put that's, we will continue to talk about those, and we'll go forward from there. All right.
There is a state statutory requirement regarding the effective date of charter amendments.
Yep.
And it requires 9.05 of local government code requires, it says charter amendment does not take effect until the governing body of the municipality enters an order in the records of the municipality declaring that the charter or amendment is adopted. So typically that's done at the first meeting after the election when you certify the results of the election itself. So it all kind of happens simultaneously, but that's the
and that's the trigger of starting the 1 year date.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, those were the additional proposed paragraphs that I had if anybody else has any additional proposed paragraphs, now's the time to lay them on me, and we'll get them on here. Otherwise, my plan is to pare this down to a pile of paragraphs that we have a consensus on, and we can maybe vote on them sort of like a consent agenda sort of a thing. And of course, anybody can pull one off if they want to. And then we will start going through each of the contested or the additional talked about ones to basically a discussion, and then a vote on each one. And what to make that easy, my plan is to put those paragraphs on a separate sheet of paper with each of our names at the bottom, so we can see how the vote went on those changes. And then we will reconstruct the charter and vote on it as a whole. But that's going to be the plan going forward, if that makes sense. We have an action item. Does anybody else have any additional proposed paragraphs that they'd like to add to the charter at this point?
I just had a couple questions on these, what I thought were typos.
Yes, sir.
In section 10.06I on the
Yep, we fixed that one.
Down, it says NI or rentals.
Yep, we fixed that one.
Okay.
That should be I/or.
I/or, okay.
Somewhere along the way that there was probably a conversion error by some magical piece of software.
All right, and on section 10.07, there's a deadline for connection. I think that should be correction in the fifth line, sixth line down.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Deadline
Correction of the non-compliance.
should be correction. Good catch. Yeah.
Okay.
And Frank, I know what you're saying, and I hear you about a lot of these these smaller changes, but I mean, some of them are just big time wrong. We need to clean them up at some point.
Well, Erin's given us what she said was probably a fairly large way to fix those, like this one that was caught.
Yep.
Which is, it doesn't go, the council can fix it. And then at some point, there'll be a determination about which ones of those can we, as I understand what Erin said, some of this stuff, the typos don't have to go to a vote. The council can fix it, correct?
No. Yes and no. So there's a ballot measure that says you authorize the council to make non-substantive corrections. So yes, the council would do it, but the voters have to approve their authority to do that.
So we would need to put that provision in the charter.
Yeah, well, that would be
to give them that power.
Wait, yeah. I think what she's saying is it needs to is I don't know whether we're going to write the ballot provision, but basically I think what our job to do would be to have a list of here's a big long list of non-substantive changes that are just typos and wrong words and conversion errors, and there's a ballot provision that says council has the right to fix these. Is that the way it works, Erin? Yeah. Okay, good. I understand it. Christina.
Can we say something like the council has the authority to change things based off of what the Charter Review Committee has suggested?
No, I don't think you can say that. I mean, I mean, Aaron, let's do this. Aaron, if you could oblige us by either providing us like some language that does that ballot provision, or directing us to somebody that's done it before so we can pull it and take a look and see what it looks like, just so we can visualize it. That always helps me, and I hope that'll help everybody else. But I would appreciate that. But I think that's a good idea. Is just, and that also makes a good sense for us to pull out a bunch of, and maybe I need to pull out 2 piles, one that we all agree on that are substantive, and one that we all agree on that are just typos, so that we've got those piles ready to go. And I will. That'll be my job over the next 2 weeks, because I believe next week is our off week, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
Just because, you know, people who might not be totally trusting of the city council for whatever reason, it might be easy to convince them that they're not just going to willy-nilly change it all. They're going to, you know, it's going to be.
Well, that's why we have to give them the specific paragraphs and the specific changes that we want them to fix, so that voters can see, oh yeah, the city charter folks said there's a big pile of them that are just need to be fixed, and they can look at them and they can vote to give the council the authority to change them. We don't give the council.
Yeah, but I think Christina makes a good point. It's purely political point.
It is.
But I think she makes a good point. So it's going to be fun to try to deal with it.
And it's her, and this is, and it's going to be totally up to the council. I mean, we may suggest that, and the council may say, oh no, we want the voters to go through and see every ballot change, and they can do that.
Or we want to change additional things or something like that, you know, like.
Yeah, or they could take all of our work and throw it in the garbage if they want to. Let's hope not, but they could. Yeah. Because we are just an advisory committee, so that is we all need to keep that in mind. Okay. Aaron, did you have something?
Yes, sir. I'm going to send you a copy of the ordinance that ordered the special election for charter amendments from 2018. And if y'all will look at the language of Proposition G, and think about how you might you would want to see it crafted differently if you want it different. Mr. Tannehill, your email address.
Yeah, it's just my name in small letters, Carter Tannehill @hotmail.com.
Thank you. Coming your way.
Okay. All right, we have an action item, and I know we had a plan to see how easy it would be for me to prepare the minutes, and based on quite a few things this past week that sucked up a huge amount of my time, I didn't get to them. So I will try to get to them next week. Plus, the video was a little late getting up, and I didn't have the video to look at to play over to get it done, which was my original plan. So it was a little slow getting up, and I had a real life daytime jobs issues to take care of. All right. So we have as an action item the election of a secretary. Is anybody willing to take that job on?
Can I nominate Paul Roberts? He nominated me, so if he's got time, I'd love to see. He can't. Sorry, it's just a busy tax season for me, so that's what
Do we have any seconds?
Second.
That's right. He's not been
No, I'm,
no,
talk about busy people, though. Paul Roberts is a busy guy.
I know he is. I know he is. I'm just kidding.
Motion to amend.
That's why I asked for volunteers. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Okay. Well, I will try to. Hopefully, we'll get the video up quicker this week, and if not, I will be going through and doing last week's a week behind, and I'm going to do them in the new suggested way, that is with as much brevity as I can, and still comply with the rules, and to get them up. And so hopefully I'll have some of those for you next time. Okay. Yes.
I have
right?
one from before, which was the one before last one, which was supposed to be my last one, the 26th.
Consulting and giving advice, because when it comes from a council or a special. So you still got one coming to me, right?
Yeah, I've got the 26th done, and then you said that we were going to get someone else to do the next one, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got the 26th.
Okay.
I don't
Frank?
know if you're doing it either, Rob. I know you've got a day job, busy too.
Okay.
Rob,
Frank?
Can you stay online after we adjourn and visit about that for a second?
About the minutes?
Yeah. It's just some tricks, just some ideas, or I call you, whichever you want to do.
Let's talk on the phone. Let's talk on the phone.
Super.
When we end the meeting, I want to end the meeting, and Dave will shut it all down anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
It's for Erin. She was going to send us a couple of charters. Did I miss it?
No, sir. I had a death in my family, so I've been a little preoccupied. I'm sorry. But I will send that to you.
Okay. What are you sending us?
The two documents, the National Civic League and the Texas version of the model charters, so that you can see. One's a guidance document about charters, and the other is a model charter with some commentary on it, so you can kind of see. The information will give you some guidance on for your discussion items. I think it'll be helpful for your discussion items for those items where you'll want to add.
Okay, great. Okay.
Erin, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes, ma'am. Christina.
I was just saying sorry to Erin for her loss. Sorry.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, sorry, Erin. Okay. Future meetings. Basically with as little info as I can provide. I wanted to tell you how the future meetings, how we were going to deal with the proposed changes, and that's. Does anybody have anything else that they want on see in the future meetings? I think we need to keep chugging and get at these as rapidly as we can, so that we can get a final document to City Council quickly. All right. Any other business?
Mr. Chairman, did you want to set a date or a target date for initial presentation to council?
I've been kind of waiting for council to ask when they would like, because they said that they were going to want to see a kind of a halftime preview, and so I'm all for that. But let's see. I'm trying to find the dates that I was given. Important dates for the charter. Okay. They are, and I will put these out in the next packet. If the city council would like a kind of a preliminary meeting, I would really like to hear what it is they would like us to discuss at that preliminary hearing, so that I just don't go in and blather on and on about what I think is important, and it may not be what they want to hear. So that'd be helpful. But let's see, we've got a our final Charter Review Committee meeting is July 5th. So, you know, there's a regular council meeting on the 3rd and a regular council meeting on the 17th. If they would tell me what, you know, I can go in and give them a progress report that we've been all the way through the charter in one pass, and we have consensus on quite a few things, and we are about to go back through on the individual items and discuss them. I mean, I don't want to waste their time. If I could write them a report that says the same thing, perhaps maybe Council Liaison, you guys could maybe let me know what it is you want to see or hear at a halftime report.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to apologize for this, but anyway, I think this is what they pay the council liaisons big bucks for. In other words, they're supposed to report about what, thanks for laughing. I think they're supposed to report about what their committee's doing. And so that may be the council job instead of Mr. Durbin's, who's got a ton of stuff to do. If you're going to secretary and prepare documents, and for a council member, one of both liaisons, to just say what you said, I think is appropriate. But Rob, that's a ton of work for you to kind of get ready for a council meeting, or to have a joint meeting with all of us there at the council, and I think it's premature for that.
I do too. And I mean, you know, assuming we get a completed document that we've all voted on, and we may or may not agree with every provision that we all voted on, I don't know that all of us need to go to present it. I mean, depending on everybody's thoughts and their time constraints and everything else. I mean, Frank and I could probably go and present it and cover all the bases, but certainly everybody would be welcome. It's an open meeting. So, but you know, we'll do whatever council wants us to do. We serve at their pleasure. Councilman Davila.
Yes, sir. I would just like to remind Mr. Robbins that last time that we went through this process, he gave a presentation and gave some history behind the provisions or the changes that were put forth for council to consider. I think that is the appropriate way to do that, because if there's something that needs to be asked regarding one of the changes, someone from this committee would be able to answer any questions that may come up with regard to the basis for those changes. So it'd be okay for us to make a general statement about what has happened, but when it comes to the technical aspect of the changes, I think that needs to be brought forth by somebody who can give historical perspective on the changes that have been put forth.
I think that would probably be appropriate at like the final presentation. Looks like the final consideration would be August 5th. Our final CRC meeting would be July 5th. And then there is a regular city council meeting on the 15th that we can, you know, that I think we could go to, and you know, but if we have this and the document is presented to them with redlined changes, then you know, I think perhaps we can we can be appropriately up to speed on the sort of questions, because I don't know about Frank, but I wouldn't want to show up at a city council meeting and just get jumped by a couple of questions out of the blue on some particular topic, or we can the way I intend to do it, we should have a numerical vote on each of the provisions, and we can certainly say, well, 4 of the members supported that, or that one was unanimous, or and I think either of us would be able to answer any questions as to why we thought the change was needed. And I think Frank and I have kind of come at these from 2 different sides. So if it's one that I didn't support, he probably did. If it's one I supported and he didn't, then I probably could.
Well,
Councilman
if I
Davila.
may, yes, sir. If I may, I think the noting how the vote was made with regard to whatever provisions or amendments that you propose, I don't believe that that's really necessary. We just need to know what it is that you're proposing be on the ballot for a charter change, and I believe just one submission or one presentation is sufficient to take care of that.
Good.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Me too. Yes, Aaron.
Yeah, I think you've come to the right conclusion. A presentation to the council on the 15th of July would be the appropriate thing. That way they have the opportunity to consider it, get all their questions answered on the 15th of July. And then they have one more council meeting yet to mull it over before they vote on any final provisions and ballot language. That way you build in a little bit of breathing room for yourself and for council. And that way, if there's any follow-up questions and they send back through you to the committee, that y'all can discuss it, come back and provide the responsive information for that August 5th date, because that's really the critical. That is the last regular council meeting. And frankly, at that council meeting, what the council is doing is voting on the actual ballot language that would be included in the ordinance, like the one that I just sent you in the email. So keep in mind with what you're presenting, it might be best at the next council meeting after, or in the next committee meeting, or the one immediately subsequent, to have in mind proposed ballot language for each of the changes, so that you have you're hitting the ground running. So you might think of that as an agenda item once you've gone through and agreed upon or voted on all of the potential changes, is to have a draft of the proposed language, because it is required to go in a particular format, and depending on how you word it, some people read it differently, so that'll be important.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, we want to make it as easy on them as possible. So we're going to have to really grind the next few times and get through some of these things. And we may need a special day where we all just lock ourselves in the council chambers and not let anyone out till we've got a bunch of things done. So, but we'll see how we do next time. I appreciate it. And thank you for providing that stuff to us, Aaron. Can we, do I hear a motion?
A question real quick. Just confirming, when is our next meeting? I know the 31st is on a Monday. So our next meeting would be the 14th, right?
No, our next meeting is, heck, I just had it up.
Yeah, the 14th.
Well, it's the second and fourth Monday, right? So the second Monday in June,
Right.
unfortunately, due to timing, is the 14th.
That's right.
Okay, just wanted to confirm, just because I know that was a kind of a funky month, so.
Yeah. Okay. And anyway, that's it, the 14th. So we only got a few meetings to go, and we really got a lot of work to do still. So, all right. I think I don't have anything else for tonight. Anybody else? I'm open to a motion.
I'll make a motion
Yes.
to
Second.
conclude the meeting.
Okay. Got a motion to adjourn and a second from Frank. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Frank, are you gonna call me?
I'm going to call you right after I turn this
Okay.
thing off.
All right.